We're all here to talk about The Wall. From Danny Dyer on BBC One. This is a new game show on Saturday nights on BBC One. So this is a new game show where people can win big money if you can get the questions right, and The Wall is your friend. The Wall being sort of this computerized. Do you know what? I'm going to be dead honest. I didn't fully understand how the wall aspect of this worked. I'm going to be dead honest. I know I'm probably not the brightest spark, and I should have understood it. But it's another one of them game shows, really, where it's not. Obviously, you've got to know the answer to the questions, but apart from that, there's no skill involved at all.
It felt like, how can we do Tipping Point again without being sued?
Yeah, in fact, they don't even get to press the buttons on the wall, do they, at all? It's so annoying. I mean, let's talk about Danny Dyer as a game show host. They don't even trust him to read the questions. They get the voice of Angela Rippon in instead.
That was the one thing that really struck me. I was thinking, okay, right, Danny Dyer, you know, whatever you think of him, you wouldn't necessarily put Danny Dyer and a quiz show together.
No.
And, in fact, you wouldn't in a million years. But, however, I was willing to give it a go, because you asked me to, and then
Thank you.
I thought they're not even allowing him to ask. He's kind of just some Cockney cheerleader, really.
Yeah.
The contestants are just sort of jumping around, shouting at this wall because they want the ball to land in big money sort of section at the bottom, and they're shouting and jumping at the wall. They've obviously been told you must look energetic and animate and shout and have lots of fun. And Danny Dyer keeps saying, "Oh, the wall giveth and the wall taketh away." And
God, it's like he's in the room.
Everyone was a treacle or something.
Yeah, exactly. And he does all that. And he's, you know, I quite like Danny Dyer, so it's fine. But I can imagine that a lot of people don't. But it's just weird, man.
It is so
weird. Took me a long time to get used to the format, and then, you know, you had this bit at the end where this contract signing business where Danny Dyer holds this kind of like weird fluorescent cylinder, which is like something out of a weird science fiction film. And, you know, you've got an element of like Eggheads where someone has to go off in a different route. It's just like all the quiz shows in one thing. Like I said, there's an element of Tipping Point in there, because to win money on the wall is basically all down to luck, really. Wherever
there's no skill.
No. And then
it's actually down to whether the people activating the wall like you or not. Really.
Yeah, quite possibly, you know. But what's interesting, if you look at, say, Pointless or The Chase, right, you've got like a bunch of different contestants being asked questions. And I've been getting, because I've been working at home quite a lot recently, so I've been watching Hardball with Aurea Dubra on BBC Two, and that's really good as well, in terms of just like you've got this chase element where you have to answer loads of questions. But on the wall, you've just got two contestants throughout the whole hour. And that's kind of quite a change to what we're used to, really.
Taking the game show element out of it for a second, one thing that I noticed, first of all, there's a studio audience who is just dead throughout. They don't get involved. They're not really that invested. And secondly, Danny Dyer really struggles to chat to the contestants. He never comes out of his
to have a normal conversation.
Yeah, he seems unable to do it. He seems unable to just chat to them as a person to another person. It's really awkward.
I think, I mean, you mentioned the chase, Paul, and I think on the chase, Bradley Walsh has that relationship with the contestants, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You know, he's on their side, he's with them throughout. Whereas here, I think that was the feeling I got from it. You know, you had the big video package about these characters, and you saw them with the families, and they told you why they wanted the money. They wanted to go to Australia, and so you were meant to be rooting for them. But I think it was just that they were there for far too long. You know, you're used to on these game shows having a sort of revolving door of people just to keep the attention going, and I just felt everything was played out. You know, they lingered so long on each question, on each decision before it was actually made. And I just found it really sort of repetitive.
And Danny Dyer was because, like we said, he didn't get to read the questions.
Right.
It made him sort of divorced from it. He had to stand there looking bemused while Angela Rippon, the voice of Angela Rippon,
and there was some. weird faux flirting from obviously a pre-recorded Angela with Danny Dyer. The connection that Danny should have with the contestants isn't there because he's not reading the questions out at the same time.
He's just not. He's just sort of watching it from the sideline. He's just got a better seat on the stage floor, hasn't he? Really.
And because there's no sort of rostrum where the contestants or the quizmaster is behind, they looked a bit lost, like walking around this massive sort of space. They're just sort of pacing up and down, and Danny Dyer sort of going, "Come on, baby, come on, baby." And they're like, "Oh, Danny, you're talking Cockney, just like in EastEnders. It's amazing." Yeah. And like you're right, the studio audience did not have a clue how to react to this. They probably didn't understand what the hell was going on.
And also the contract thing, which is like the big sort of twist, if you like. They didn't mention that at all. No. They could have said, "Don't forget, she can sign a contract. Has she already signed it?" They could have built up some tension there.
Yeah,
and then they just added that on at the end completely.
It's like, we know you've got this figure that you said you'd leave with at the beginning. Will you get more than that? You know, you say. They didn't build the tension up at all, and this was something that the BBC were really sort of promoting at Edinburgh. This was one of the preview clips. This was a bit of a twist on the Saturday night game show. You know, that was the thing. We've got Danny Dyer hosting a game show. That is the hook. You know.
Well, I feel like they made him a bit of a spare part in his own show. It didn't have any charm with it, which Danny Dyer can be charming if he's allowed to be.
And yet, the very final part of it where this contract business came into it, that was actually quite tense. But you're right, there was no flagging up of it. There was no kind of warning about that. Suddenly it was just like, right, you've got to sign a contract, and there's this weird fluorescent cylinder out of a sci-fi film that has come from nowhere. But now you've got this real dilemma, this real jeopardy moment right at the end. I actually quite like that bit, but the rest of it just felt like about 10 different quiz shows all kind of shoehorned into one weird thing. My mom and my dad are absolute kind of quiz show fiends. They watch, The Chase every day, Pointless every day. I can understand it because it's addictive, right? You want to play along with those guys too. And
Could you see them enjoying this?
I don't think so, because my mom hates Danny Dyer.
I think
so. That's also the problem. If you don't like
Danny Dyer, him, you're not going to watch it, are you?
You're in trouble. Whereas someone like a Bradley Walsh, an Alexander Armstrong, a Kinnick Knowles is fairly, middle of the road guy personalities. Do you know what I mean? They're not chalk and cheese sort of people that you can just watch without actually having too much of an opinion on them.
Absolutely.
Whereas Danny Dyer is obviously
divisive. Yeah. Okay.
And this was a game show rather than a quiz show, because I learned this at Edinburgh this year. You stand on a game show, you sit on a quiz show.
Okay, so if we're calling this a quiz show, but isn't that just following the blueprint, as we mentioned right at the top of the show, throughout the decades? It is a generation game type of thing. It is a Saturday night jump around, be silly, high energy kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And who's to say it was the opening episode? I was struggling with the format. In a couple of weeks' time, when I'm down with the format, I might think, actually, this is quite, fun, and it kind of follows that kind of Saturday night game show.
I just would argue that it wasn't that high energy. The contestants were, but the atmosphere wasn't that high energy.
If you could transport the audience from, say, the X Factor into the war, it'll be like some sort of game show on speed, on steroids.
Sort of prime time X Factor, not like modern day X Factor.
Yes, that's right.